We're about to dive into one of the most epic family sagas you'll ever hear. Seriously, it's this massive, multi-generational story, packed with jealousy, betrayal, and some serious dysfunction. And it's all about how this one, incredibly flawed family, against all odds, would go on to shape history.
And really, this whole saga boils down to one big question. Can something truly great be built on a foundation of lies and conflict? You'd think the answer would be no, right? But this story says yes. And how it gets there? Well, that's what makes it so fascinating.
So, our story kicks off with the original family conflict. And right at the center of it is a man named Jacob. Now, he is not your typical hero. In fact, for a big chunk of his life, he's pretty much the villain of his own story.
And get this, his whole character is baked right into his name. In Hebrew, the name Jacob sounds just like their word for deceiver. It also means heel grabber, since he was literally born grabbing his twin brother's heel. It's like his destiny as a trickster was set from day one.
And here is where the family drama really gets cooking. You've got these two brothers, polar opposites, and to make things worse, you have blatant parental favoritism splitting the family right down the middle. Their dad, Isaac, loves the rugged, outdoorsy hunter Esau, but their mom, Rebecca, she prefers the clever, stay-at-home son, Jacob. This tension is the spark that's about to set everything on fire.
And this is where Jacob absolutely lives up to his name. His mother cooks up this wild plan for him to steal the family blessing, which was a huge deal back then, from his brother. So Jacob puts on a disguise, covering his smooth skin with goat hair to trick his blind father's sense of touch. He literally walks in, lies to his father's face, and steals his brother's identity and his entire future.
This one lie just has catastrophic consequences. It shatters the whole family. Isaac is left heartbroken. Esau is filled with so much rage he wants to murder his brother. Rebecca's brilliant plan completely backfires. The son she tried to help is forced to flee, and she never sees him again. And Jacob, the supposed winner here, he has to run for his life, starting a 20-year exile.
But, and this is where the story gets so good, it takes this beautifully ironic turn. Jacob runs away to a foreign land to escape his brother, and it's there that the deceiver is about to get a serious taste of his own medicine.
So while he's there, Jacob falls completely in love with a woman named Rachel. He agrees to work for her father for 7 years just for the right to marry her. And as this quote tells us, those 7 years just flew by because he was so in love. But here's the twist. Rachel's father, a man named Laban, is even more of a schemer than Jacob is. The master trickster has finally met his match, and he has no clue what's about to hit him on his own wedding night.
And what happens next is just perfect poetic justice. On his wedding night, in the pitch-black darkness of the tent, Laban switches his daughters. Jacob wakes up married to Leah, Rachel's older sister. You see the parallel? Just like Jacob used his father's blindness to trick him, Laban uses the darkness to trick Jacob. The deceiver has been totally and completely deceived.
Okay, so fast forward 20 years. After all that work, marriage, and building a big family, Jacob finally decides to head home. But before he can meet his brother again, he has to face his past and himself in one of the most mysterious and transformative nights in all of literature.
He gets word that his brother Esau is coming to meet him with 400 men. Now, the last time Jacob saw him, Esau wanted to kill him. So, as you can imagine, Jacob is terrified. He sends his family on ahead and spends the night all alone, just wrestling with his fear and with a mysterious stranger. He wrestles this man all night long, and as the sun comes up, Jacob has this stunning realization. This was no ordinary fight. He names the place Peniel, which means face of God, because he is convinced he has just wrestled with God himself and survived. And in this one moment, everything changes. This divine being gives him a new name. He's no longer Jacob the deceiver. He is now Israel, which means he who struggles with God. His entire identity is redefined, not by his past lies, but by this struggle.
But he doesn't walk away from the fight unscathed. The stranger touches his hip and Jacob is left with a permanent limp. This physical wound is so symbolic. The man who spent 20 years running from his problems literally can't run anymore. He is forced to limp humbly toward his brother and finally face his past.
So Jacob makes up with Esau. And for a minute you think, okay, the cycle of conflict is finally broken. But
Has Jacob really changed? Because pretty soon, those old, dysfunctional patterns pop right back up in his own family, setting the stage for the next generation's big betrayal.
And in a truly tragic echo of his own childhood, Jacob makes the exact same mistake his parents made. He openly favors one son, Joseph, the child of his beloved wife, Rachel. He even gives Joseph this fancy, expensive coat, which is basically a giant billboard saying, "I'm the favorite." This just sparks a fire of jealousy in his other sons, a jealousy that gets so bad they eventually conspire to get rid of Joseph. They sell him into slavery, then go home and lie to their father's face, telling him his favorite son is dead.
And this brings us to the final act of the saga. The story now shifts to Joseph down in Egypt, where a horrible act of betrayal gets transformed into an unbelievable story of redemption, bringing this whole family drama to a stunning conclusion.
So even though he was sold into slavery, Joseph's wisdom and just his sheer integrity help him rise through the ranks. It's an incredible underdog story. He eventually becomes the second in command of all of Egypt, and he ends up saving the entire region from a terrible famine. And it's this very famine that's going to bring his brothers, the ones who betrayed him, right back into his life.
So this sets up the ultimate test, right? Joseph now holds the lives of his brothers in his hands. He has all the power. After everything they did to him, is he going to choose revenge or reconciliation? How can this generational curse of pain and betrayal finally be stopped?
And this is the climax of the entire story. When Joseph finally reveals who he is, his brothers are, of course, terrified. But instead of revenge, he offers this incredible perspective. He reframes their evil act, saying it wasn't the end of his story, but actually a necessary part of a much bigger divine plan for good.
And with that single act of forgiveness, Joseph just shatters the cycle. The story that started with a brother stealing a blessing ends with a brother giving one. Deception is answered not with more deception, but with grace. It is such a powerful resolution to generations of conflict. So we're left with this final thought. This whole nation-building epic is founded on the stories of deeply flawed people. I mean, Jacob the deceiver becomes Israel, the one who struggles. Joseph's suffering becomes the very thing that saves everyone. And it really makes you wonder, right? What if our greatest struggles aren't actually obstacles to our purpose, but are, in fact, the path to it?